if they make metals to lighter metals so your car goes farther on a gallon of gas. They make fertilizers, if they make chemicals, if they make anything, your tennis shoes, your computers, your phones. If they manufacture products, dioxin goes into the air, small, minute parts. So they can't really get away from making dioxin. We have to try to figure out how to capture it because it's a persistent toxic chemical. Now one thing, usually you don't mention it to the fourth graders, years ago we burnt everything in burn barrels. I mean, if we had trash, if it could burn, we took it out there and burn it. Well, when you melt plastics, when you recycle plastic, which recycling is good, when they melt the plastic, dioxin goes in the air. Every time you throw a plastic cup, foam plate in a campfire, dioxin's released into the air. In the 60s, they eliminated the burn barrels. You couldn't do that anymore. Now the EPA, the EPA was looking at the country. Now you have to understand the Industrial Revolution from approximately 1900 to 1970, before those powerful laws were enacted. They could dump anything in the water they wanted to, and they could put anything in the air. The adage at the time was dilution was the solution to pollution. If you put just a little bit of it in a big body of water, it would be no problem. But because of DDT, they realized there's a lot of chemicals that are a big problem. And the EPA looked at the country, and they looked at all the different sites, because it wasn't just Michigan. You know, we're focusing on Michigan because that's where we live. But anywhere there was industry, anywhere they dumped things on the land. They used to take oil, change your oil in their car and dump it just in your backyard, you know. It's all over the country, and the EPA realized that it was extensive, and they decided that they would pick 10 sites that they felt were the worst or the most harmful, and if they cleaned it up, would have the most positive environmental impact. Out of the whole United States, they picked the top 10 Superfund sites, and the EPA office in Saginaw is proof that we have one of the top 10 Superfund sites in the United States right now that they're going to be cleaning up. And it's the dioxin issue in the Tittabawassee. Now a lot of the pollution that they're fighting, and a lot of the bad pollution, before the EPA, it's called historic or legacy pollution. Because dioxin is persistent toxic chemical, it never went away, and it's still there. DDT is still there. If you dug under 60 years of sediment in the bottom of our rivers, you would stir up DDT. That's why dredging rivers is a very hazardous thing to do. Nobody wants that in their backyard. Where do you put the dredgings? We have Sludge Island out there, where they dredge a river, and they build that up and fill it. But nobody wants them, because when they start digging down, all the sins of the past are buried under 60 years of sediment. And DDT is still down there. But we have one of the top 10 Superfund sites in the United States, the dioxin issue in Tittabawassee. Now I know that it's bad. I look at it as, I am very thankful we're not number 11 on the list, because number 11 isn't much better than number 10 on the list, or number 8 on the list, and they're not going to do anything on those sites for quite a while. The dioxin issue in the EPA is committed to cleaning it up. The chemical company that dumped the dioxin in the river years ago is paying to clean it up. You will be grandparents before that's cleaned up. They're figuring it'll be anywhere from 35 to 50 years before they'll have the dioxin issue cleaned up. And the dioxin is in our fish. Think about it, 35 to 50 years, you're going to be grandparents by the time that's cleaned up. And there is a dioxin fish advisory. They have published it. You go to michigan.gov/eat-safe-fish. There is 47 pages that look like this. What they did was, they know that there's issues in the water. We know there's issues with the fish in Michigan. They went in all the bodies of water in Michigan that you could fish out of, and they caught fish, and they actually tested them. And there's a column here that says what they found in the fish. PCBs, dioxin, mercury. You don't see DDT. Like I said, it's not gone though. It's under 60 years of sediment. So it's not showing up in our fish right now. On some of the charts, you'll see a little bit of DDT. But all of those are found in the fish. Now they have two categories here. One is general population. And if you're a male, 15 years or older, if you wanted to see if it was safe to eat fish there, you would look in that category. And then women and children are here, 14 years and younger, and then women. Because with the bald eagle, we found out that the young were affected the most. Because they grow so quick, from 4 inches to 30 in 3 months, the DDT or persistent chemicals actually interrupt cell division. They'll suppress cells from forming, from dividing and multiplying. They will make other cells multiply and divide in hypermode. So the women and children have their own category. It's a little more stringent. But just as an example, if I were to catch a 28-inch walleye in Saginaw Bay, could I eat that fish or should I eat that fish? If I go down here, I look at Saginaw Bay and here's a walleye roe. And women and children are here, 28-inch, here's length of fish, come down as a diamond. If you look in the legend, it says, do not eat these fish. They live a long time. The longer the fish, the larger the fish, the older the fish, the more it has bioaccumulated those persistent toxic chemicals in its flesh and fat. So it's advisable not to do it. Now, the little kids are cute. I eat walleye, Len, am I gonna die? And I said, no, you're not gonna die. If you eat fish a few times a year, what they're looking at is what the medical community suggests, eating fish often. Some of the cultures of the world that live the longest, cancer-free, eat fish 3 times a day, almost every day of their life, and they're very healthy. But they are not contaminated fish. So we know the omega-3 fatty acids are good for us, and they suggest we eat fish 2 or 3 times a week. But we have to eat them smartly if we do that, and we eat them out of the waters of Michigan, or anywhere really. Now if you caught in Saginaw Bay the same walleye and it's only 15 inches, that's just over the legal limit. Can't keep them smaller than that. You'll see it's a dot. Now that says once a month. Now that is really 1 portion a month, maybe the size of a deck of cards. So if you get a fish and you can get 4 portions out of that, you really should eat it safely. Put it in the freezer and only pull it out once a month. But yeah, this advisory, like I said, it's got 46 or 47 pages. It lists all the bodies of water. Not all of them are polluted the same. You think about it, years ago when there were no roads, when the voyageurs came and traveled, how did they get from place to place? They used the waters as a roadway. When the settlers came and started moving across the continent, where did they settle? They need water. People need water. They need it for their livestock, for their crops, for themselves. They settled on the water. The towns grew on water. Industry grew on the water. They used water for processing, and they would dump it back in the same river they took it from. And so that's why we have a lot of this problem on the water. I think that's probably all I'm going to really tell you about, but it's just really important that you look at that. If you go out fishing, if you go out camping, and you think you're going to fish, look at the advisory before you go. Another thing is, we find that the prey fish, the smaller panfish, like bluegill, sunfish, the small rock bass, the smaller prey fish that get eaten all the time by the larger fish, they never get very big. They don't live long enough to bioaccumulate a lot of the toxins. If you go fishing and you don't know what you should eat or keep, if you go with, in the case of the walleye, don't eat the 30-inch walleye, eat the one just over the legal limit, the smaller walleye. If you go fishing, you're safer with the smaller prey or panfish. Eat those. Leave the big ones. Enjoy them. Carp, catfish, fish eat at different levels in the water. Carp and catfish, bottom feeders. You know, if you're gonna eat them in contaminated waters, they are very bad to eat. There are some places you can eat carp or catfish, but they're inland lakes. Sometimes you see rivers listed twice, you know, Salvo River's listed twice. Well, it may wind 300 miles through Michigan, and it winds all the way down until it gets to a town where there was a fertilizer plant or a paper mill or something. And from that point downriver, it's contaminated. So parts of the river may be safer than others. It's just a very important thing. If you're gonna eat fish, like they suggest, out of the waters, you really need to know if it's safe or not. Now, one thing I do have with me, this is it's a study skin. It's not a live mount, so it's not gonna look like what you would see at the park. It's an immature bald eagle. It never made it past its first season. It was born, it grew to full size, and it could not fly. And it died. It was found on the edge of the Saginaw Bay 60 years ago. When they did do the testing on it, it was contaminated with DDT. So somehow the DDT affected the muscles, and it could not fly and fish. So, and it died. So I'll bring it around. It's pretty neat. The bald eagles, you always know that they have the white head and tail. They don't get that till about 3 years old. So they are this color. It's a defense mechanism. When they're this color, they hide in the trees better. When they finally do get a fish and they're successful, they can actually take it and no one will steal it from them. They can hide better. But it did die of DDT. I've seen a lot of students. And one thing that, if you look at their feet, they're very dry and scaly, reptile, and they have the hooked beak. And if you look at a snapping turtle, well, other turtles too, but a snapping turtle, it's more pronounced. If you look at their mouth, it actually has sort of a beak-type form. That's just a couple of things that scientists are saying that reptiles and birds are related. I want to touch.
I did say I wanted to bring it in. I did say.
You know, that's why scientists are saying that reptiles and birds are closely related and maybe came off the same evolutionary path. They're looking for a bone in the pelvic area that the dinosaurs back then and the birds now would have. And I think they found it in Sioux, the dinosaur at the Natural History Museum in Chicago.
Yeah, they proved that they're the descendants of dinosaurs.
Yeah, there was that one bone. It was a lot smaller than all the bones. So if any of the bones in the when they were buried years ago with the dinosaur bones, they were very small. They were usually crushed or broken, and they didn't show up. But they've actually found it. Sioux was about 90% complete bone-wise. They did find a bone that looked very similar that definitely links the reptiles and the birds out of the same evolutionary path. But he has good talons. He has something really neat on his eyes. He has nictitating membrane on his eyes. He has 2 sets of eyelids. The one set of eyelids is clear, just like glasses or sunglasses. And when it's flying down, there's a really neat program on PBS, and I caught the last half of it on eagles. They had a webcam in an eagle's nest. And the nictitating membrane, if you were to stick your head out a car window and hold your eyes open, you might get dust and dirt in your eyes. You have to blink. Well, when they're fishing, what makes them an excellent fisherman is they don't have to blink. They have that nictitating membrane over their eye. It keeps it moist. It keeps bugs and dust and debris out of their eye when they're flying. They fly 40 miles an hour when they're just flying level, but when they're diving, they can fly up to 100 miles an hour. And they don't have to blink because they have that nictitating membrane, and they see 8 times better than we do. So if we saw fish in the stream, if they were looking from a mile up, that's what they'd see just as well as we did right there. So and the nictitating membrane helps them fish because they don't have to blink. Any questions? Yes.
So the DDT didn't affect the fish as much as it did the animals that ate the fish? Is that just because it wasn't allowed to accumulate as much in the fish as it did the other animals?
Well, yeah, they did, and, you know, they found the older, as they got older, it might harm, but we're talking 20, 30 years. A lot of fish don't never live that long. And the eagles, the same thing, 10 to 13 years. If they would have lived 30 years, you might have seen tumors and things and them dying from cancers. But the fact is 10 to 13 years wasn't enough to cause the cancers. But the young were affected because of their rapid growth rate. And the DDT did affect that. And the dioxin is the same thing. Another thing with the dioxin, they're cleaning it up, and it's going to take a long time, but what they also found was it's heavier and it settles in deep pockets in the bottom of the river. Well, when they go to dig them up, it's just like getting sand with your hands. Some of that resuspends. Every time they're going to start at the source, and every time they dig it up, some resuspends and floats down the river. So they're going to be chasing that for, 100 miles before they clean it up. But they also found that the floodplains are affected. So now we don't have just a dioxin fish advisory. The Michigan Department of Community Health also has a dioxin small game advisory. Because now the floodplains have dioxin on it. Now you have your turkeys eating off it. If there's a farmer, he's got chickens and ducks all around. Now they're getting it. The deer are eating off the ground and getting the dioxin in their system. So when they're cleaning it up, not just the water, they actually test the soil and scrape off the tops of the yards, the soil, topsoil, to get the dioxin. And then they have to put more soil. And they'll dispose of it. They'll, I believe a lot of it's going to be burnt. The soil and the dioxin will be burnt. The ashes will be put in a landfill, a capped and clay-lined landfill, so that nothing seeps out. But it's going to be a big, big process. It's going to be a lot of years in the making.
They did that in St. Louis, didn't they? Pine River.
Yeah, it's a serious issue, and like I said, they had these meetings and a handful of people showed up. And yet it's extremely important and no one showed up, so they're sort of going to the back door with the kids, trying to tell them the issue, take this home, show your parents. And we've had a couple, just recently we had a gentleman say that he has leukemia right now and they feel it's from eating, something in his diet, a toxin in the air. He said he grew up around here and he lived on fish out of the Saginaw River and Saginaw Bay his whole life. Now he's in his 50s and he's got leukemia. And they said it's definitely a chemical type thing, so he said maybe that's it. And I said, well, it could be. I mean, I lived out there my whole life. I don't think we ate as much fish, but there's clean places in Michigan too. If you have if you have a spring-fed lake and it's fed from the bottom, the water is filtered through the earth, and the water's cleaner there. So you might even be able to eat a catfish there, or a carp. But the Saginaw Bay, Saginaw River, and St. Louis is very much affected. You just have to be careful.
Thank you very, very much. That was awesome. Thank you.
I felt a little nervous sitting in the principal's office.
Oh, I know, I didn't know an hour, I wanted to run out.